Now, an argument is really two people mirroring each other. When you are arguing with somebody, even on Facebook, when you are debating with anybody, guess what? Y'all actually agree. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about what is really happening when we're getting into arguments and debates with people. And how, and I'm, first of all, like I say, I have not arrived. I say that all the time. I have not arrived. I am not beyond being triggered and beyond getting pulled into arguments. But I'm going to tell you why we get into those arguments, and we're going to figure out how we can reduce that, because it interrupts our peace. And not only just arguments, just really getting into this is relieving pain as well. It has to do with, letting go of pain as well. So I named it There Is Only One Argument, because I came to that conclusion. I don't remember. I had an argument with somebody, and after I started studying and stuff, I started realizing that every argument I had with this person was really about the same thing. Underneath of all of the arguing and going back and forth, it was really about the I am. That's the only argument there is. That's the only argument that we're ever having, is what you say your I am is. Meaning that whatever you connect after you say I am this, I am that. That's the only argument that we ever have. So the other part of that is you're never arguing with anybody else. Never. It appears like you're arguing with somebody else, but you're never arguing with anybody else. You are always arguing with yourself. So normally what we're really doing is we're arguing with the voice that's in our head, and we actually create those experiences that manifest outside of us because we have an argument in our head. So we manifest that argument within another person to show us what's really going on in our head. It's no different than manifestation, y'all. The same way we think about, oh yeah, we can create our own reality and we can create our thought. Yeah, you're still doing that. You're still doing that when you get into arguments with people. When you're having arguments in your head, guess what? You're manifesting that shit too. Okay? So this argument that you're having in your head is really, of course, is directly related to your fears, your doubts, and your insecurities. Always. It's your double, your diablo, your devil that's in your head that's you're going back and forth with about what your I am is. Okay? This is the only person that you're ever arguing and debating with or about is the diablo that's in your head. The word Diablo actually comes from the word accuser. In the Bible, when they're talking, the Bible has a lot to do with law. So when you get to the New Testament, they start talking about the accuser a lot, which is really a lawful term, because that's really who the plaintiff is, the accuser. But anyway, that word means Diablo. That's the devil. Okay, so if you ever read in the Bible and you see that word accuser or accuse, it's really talking about the devil, because it is the devil that projects blame, that looks outside. The devil, well, one side of the devil anyway, because remember, the devil is two, Diablo. So the one side of the devil that's always looking out is always looking for something to blame. It's always looking for a scapegoat. That is why it's the accuser, because it's always accusing somebody else. It's always pointing a finger at somebody else about what they are doing. Okay? So what that really is the accuser or the Diablo that's in your head that you're arguing back and forth with. Every argument is doing either one or two things. Either you're protecting your I am, or you're rejecting your I am. That's my opinion. Either you're protecting it, you're defending it, or you're rejecting it. You're rejecting it with doubts, fears, and insecurities. Okay? Now, an argument is really two people mirroring each other. When you are arguing with somebody, even on Facebook, when you are debating with anybody, guess what? Y'all actually agree. Now, you might have heard Torah say something like this before. Like, she might have said, I know she on her fast right now, so I don't know if she on here. But she might have said something like, even when you argue with somebody, you're still agreeing with them. You know why you're still agreeing with them? Because y'all are on the same frequency. For you to have an argument with somebody, y'all have to be on the same energetic frequency and vibration. Because y'all are having a conversation. If they're in front of you, not literally, they could be on the computer, they could be on the phone, whatever. They have your attention, you're locked into them. Y'all have to be on the same vibration and frequency. So that is what it means to say that when you're arguing with somebody, you're still agreeing with them. You might not be agreeing with what they're saying, but y'all agree on vibration-wise. Okay? So the question is, when we're having these arguments, aren't we always arguing about what we believe about ourselves, what we believe to be true or false about ourselves? That's the reason why there's only one argument, and it's about your I am. Okay? So even if you look at the word argue, put the you in front of it, and now it says you agree. If you move those letters around, it still says you agree. So arguing is like sex, okay? Because in order for you to have sex, there has to be two opposing parties, and they're banging up against each other, which is really like a war. So that's another way to show you how, for you to argue with somebody, there has to be some type of agreement there. So it's just like sex. It's two people banging up against each other. Okay? And they're in agreement. If you're arguing with somebody, if you're going back and forth with somebody, you're in agreement. You're in agreement that we disagreeing with something. That right there shows you that y'all are in agreement about something. Now, the arguing always boils down to what's happening in your mind and in your heart. I'm looking at your comments. Argument, agreement. Yep, they're the same thing. So you're only arguing in your mind and your heart. You're really not arguing with the other person. I'm going to keep saying that so that we could be clear. And I'm talking to myself as well. Because if you look at the word quarrel, which also means to argue, fight, dispute, quarrel has that core part on the front of it, and it's L. Well, core means heart. Core or car means heart, as in like cardiology. So that tells you right there that every quarrel is really about what's going on in your heart. Okay? Your heart. Not so much about the other person just triggered it, but it's what's going on in your heart. So like I said earlier, what you did was, because you're arguing about in your own heart and in your own mind about something, you manifested that in a reflection so that you can see what the hell you're really arguing about in your head. Okay? To further back up what I'm saying, if you look up the word in the Bible, there's a phrase, have a quarrel. Have a quarrel. Have a quarrel. And the Hebrew word for that is an echo. This is what I be trying to tell people. If they just study the words, it's going to show them everything that they need to see. But the word have a quarrel comes from the Hebrew word an echo, and it's spelled E-N-E-C-H-O, an echo. So if you have a fight, what is an echo? It's a reflection. An echo is just another word for saying a mirror, a reflection, a circle. All that shit is all the same thing. Okay, so to have a quarrel means that there's an echo. Y'all are going back and forth, which means y'all are really doing the same thing. So there's a couple of scriptures that I can show you where, of course, the Bible is telling us to not argue. So Colossians 3:13. Now I want you to keep in mind, whenever you see those numbers, 3:13, interesting, I just saw 13 up there. But when you see those numbers 3:13, I always interpret them as I am that I am. Because 3 is an M, I is a 1, and then there's another M on the end. So 3:13 is I am that I am. So Colossians 3:13 says, bear with each other and forgive one another. If any one of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you. Now, and that's in the NIV version. In the King James version, it says, if you have an argument with someone, or it says, if you have a quarrel with someone, it says to forgive them. We could just end it right here because that's really the end of it. But see, we don't like to do that. We want to keep it going. So I'm going to tell you why we want to keep it going and what's really happening. But anyway, Proverbs 23 says, it is in one's honor to avoid strife, but every fool is quick to quarrel. Meaning that fools like to argue. I'm going to tell you why they like to argue, why we like to argue. 2 Timothy 2:23. Don't have anything to do with foolish and stupid arguments because you know they produce quarrels. The Bible continuously tells you this. Proverbs 13:10. Where there is strife, there is pride. That has something to do with arguing. Where there is strife, there is pride, but wisdom is found in those who take advice. Wisdom is found in those who take advice. Advice is advisory, and advisory is adversary. So when you are in an argument with someone, I promise you that they are there to show you something within yourself. They are actually your advisor. Your advisor is your adversary. If you don't take the time to figure out why the argument really occurred, then it's going to keep coming up in just different people and different scenarios because you're not paying attention to yourself. Everything that you think is adversarial is just a reflection of you. I know that this is an ongoing theme and y'all going to get tired of hearing it, but that's the whole Bible is an argument. If we're going to have church and we're going to talk about what the Bible is talking about, isn't there a war going on through the entire freaking Bible? There's a war going on the entire freaking Bible. That means there's an argument going on. And the reason why that's happening is because it's really based on how we got here, which is sex, which is how we create. Okay, let me see. Cure. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Verona. Come on, there we go, right there. Quarrel, she said quarrel. The quarrel part in quarrel is the cure. That's the adversary giving you, hey, here's what you need to pay attention to within yourself. The adversary came to give you the cure within the arguments that you're having. Because like I said, if anybody just came on, I said in the beginning that you're having these arguments because you're really having an argument with your I am. You are really having an argument with who you say you are. That's what every single argument is about. Every last argument that we have is about you and your I am and how much you believe in what the hell you're saying. All right. If you are adamant and pressed about wanting someone to agree with you, because that's what's happening when you're arguing, you're like damn near begging somebody to agree with you. So if you are, I'm going to say it like that. If you're begging somebody to agree with you, that means you're doing what? Number one, you're seeking their approval. You're asking them, please approve of me. Please approve of what I'm saying. Okay? It means that you need help to convince yourself that what you're saying about your I am is right, true, and correct. It means you need help. So you're asking them to help you. Please approve of what I'm saying. On what I think, which means that you have doubt. When you're arguing with people, that means you have doubt. You have doubt on what you're saying. How do I know you have doubt? Because you're seeking validation from them. You're seeking for them to say, yes, I agree with you. Now you have to ask yourself, why? Why do you give a fuck whether they agree with you or not? And I understand that there's circumstances where it is kind of important that they agree with you. But like I said, they are agreeing with you in vibration or else they wouldn't be arguing with you. Y'all wouldn't be arguing. Okay. So I said you're seeking validation. So if you're seeking validation and you're seeking approval and you have doubt, that means that you are not firmly planted in your I am. And you want to know what? That's okay. Because we sway. Don't we? We sway. But, you know, the Bible says that, I forget what the scripture is, but it's something about you'll be like a tree planted near the waters, meaning that you'll be very firm You'll be very stable in your I am. You want to be firm like a tree. You want to be stable like a tree in your I am. That way you're not swayed back and forth by other people's opinions and other people's just flinging you around like a goddamn pinata. And you get sucked into all these arguments. So the key is to you being firm in your I am. That's the only time you get swayed back and forth like that, is when you have doubt. Okay. It also means when you get into these arguments with people, it also means that you are seeking something external that's going to make you whole. You're looking for someone to make you whole, complete, and perfect when you do that. This is why the Bible keeps telling you not to argue. But it's not only telling you not to argue externally, it's telling you in your own head. In your own head. You're arguing with your own self in your heart and in your own head. Okay? You need to get to the bottom of why you're doing that. So there might be some arguing there, I suppose so. But you need to get to why you're doing that. Okay. So we don't have to argue with people when we know who we are. That's just the bottom line. You don't have to get into any arguments with anybody or any disagreements with anybody. When you know who you are, when you know why you're here, and when you know what the fuck you're doing and why you're doing it. You don't need nobody else's approval, nobody else's validation, no kind of external shit. You don't need it. And you won't be seeking it. So, because there will be nothing left to argue about. I said that when you know. I talked about this in my last sermon about knowing, when I was talking about money. I was saying that when you know it in the core of your cells and the heart of your cells, a lot of shit going to start going away, because it's not even going to be on the same vibration as you. Therefore, it's not going to trigger you. You're not even going to see it. You're going to be like, oh, okay. Oh, all right. And keep going about your fucking business. So the word no, in the word no, K-N-O-W, is the word one. Because the W is also an E. So in the word no is also the word one. So what that's telling you to me is to know one. Who's the one? You. You're the one. You're the unique, which is one. You're the solo, which is one. You're the soul, which is one. To know yourself is to know the one. That's why they call Neo in the Matrix the one. So knowing yourself is how you get away from constantly getting into arguments with people. Okay? It's more important for you to focus on you agreeing with yourself than you arguing with somebody else. That's why Jesus said, agree with thy adversary quickly. The adversary is you. Agree with yourself quickly, because when you don't, you're going to manifest all the shit that you disagree with yourself about. Okay. How do we do that? I talked about this in one of the other sermons. No two thoughts can be in the same place. So you have to replace those arguments that you're having in your head. You have to replace them with I ams. I am confirmation is so powerful because it's a non-negotiable statement. I am XYZ is non-negotiable. When I wake up in the morning and I do positive affirmations, I say, I am a traveling teacher. I am a metaphysician. I am a preacher. I am an evangelist for Christ. You have to remove that doubt by using them. I am. I mean, I know it sounds really corny and really like, oh, everybody's doing I am, but no, like they are non-negotiable statements. I am is a non-negotiable state. I'm not negotiating with you about who I said I am and what I'm here to do. The only way you're in the arguments is when you're negotiating that shit in your head. Okay? Amen. So now that you know that, every time you get into these arguments with people, before you go back and forth with them, it's so hard to do it when you're in the midst of it. Trust me, I know. But even after y'all finish arguing and you go sit somewhere and you go sit down, you need to really evaluate, number one, what really triggered you? And it was something in you that had nothing to do with them. So you need to be honest with yourself about what really triggered you, because it had something to do with your I am. And you need to be real with yourself that you're struggling in this area as far as being confident in that area, because that's what it is. Very likely that's what it is. That's part of what it is. Okay, let me see. I just want to go through these comments. Repetition, the father of teaching. Yep. Repetition is definitely the father. You have to keep saying it. You have to keep saying it. Good evening, Quado. I remember advisory was in my name breakdown you did for me, if I remember correctly. Okay. Get grounded. Yes, get grounded like a tree by the waters. Did y'all share this yet? Nowhere to stand? Okay. You sound like the voice I don't want to hear. Oh, you're gonna, when you realize how powerful this is, Offset, you're gonna be like, I wanted to hear that. You're gonna be like, yes, yes. Because it's powerful. Okay? So, let's talk about what an argument really is. Okay, I did already say that an argument is when you agree with somebody, and an argument is when you're not standing in the power of your I am. But I want to go into what it means from a lawful perspective, because that's really what it is. It's the same shit that happened when you go into court. You guys may have seen me say this before, but you're always in court. You're in court right now, because court is your heart. Okay, court is the core. The center, the heart. Court is also the mind. And all arguments are happening within your mind and your heart before they even show up. The Lord always says in the Bible, the Lord says that he'll get somewhere before you. He says, like, I open a path and I get there before you even get there. So that means the shit that's in your head is creating already before the argument even happened. You'd already started creating it in your head. Okay. So that's why I know that it's really happening in your heart and in your head. Now, the word court, if you look up the etymology of it, it means an enclosed yard. It means those that's assembled in a yard. It means a garden or a plot of ground. This is how I know that it's really talking about your head. Because a plot of ground in a garden, we talked about this last week, is where? The Garden of Eden, which is in your head. Okay? So the court is happening in your mind and within your heart. It's also the word horticulture, which is a garden, which has to do with gardening. Horticulture is heart. Hort of culture, heart of culture, heart culture. This is how I know that you're talking about your heart and your mind. So that's really where court is happening at. In your heart and in your mind. Now, a court trial is called a what? When you go to court, they call it a trial, which a trial is a test, but they also call it a hearing. Right? When you go to court, they call it a hearing. So what court really is that's happening in your mind and in your heart, it's a test, because it's a trial, to see if you are listening to yourself. Can you hear yourself? Do you even hear what you're saying when you having these arguments? Do you even hear your own voice, number one? And also, the person that you're arguing with, who is your reflection, who is your advisor, who is your advisory, do you hear them? Because they're there to advise you. Oh, I know that's hard, y'all. Let me take a drink on that, because I know it's hard. I know. But if you don't do it, even if you don't do it in the midst of it, you have to, after you have the argument, I don't care if you never speak to this motherfucker again. You ain't never got to even speak to the person again. But I'm saying that you still have to evaluate what really triggered that. And you still have to take something that they said within that argument was for you to hear. I promise you. I promise you that something they said, because they are your mirror, they are your reflection, they are your advisor, your adversary, is telling you something that you need to hear. So like I said, a court is a trial and a trial is a hearing, and the test is to see if you can hear. All right? Now, the other thing is that when you go to court, there is a plaintiff and there is a defendant. The plaintiff is the person that's complaining. If you look up the word plaintiff, the etymology of it, it means to complain. It actually means to complain and to be wretched. So the person that's complaining, they're the one that called you in the court. They're the one that came to you and said, hey, I got a problem with you. I got a problem with something you did. I got a problem with something that you said. They're the plaintiff. You want to know why they have a problem with it? Because they feel like they're not whole in some area. You take somebody to court because you feel like they did damage to you and you're not whole because of some type of damage that they did to you, right? Isn't that why you take somebody to court? Isn't that why you're a plaintiff? Because you don't feel whole. But that also lets you know right there that something within you is lacking. You're lacking something. And you don't realize that, guess what? You're already whole. You're already whole, perfect, and complete. But you're looking for somebody else to make you whole. That's why I said in the very beginning that we only argue because we feel like I'm not going to be whole unless this person does X, Y, and Z. That's where we screwing it all up in. You can't look to somebody else to make you whole. Okay? And the defendant is standing up there defending their I am. Now what? Why you need to defend your I am if you know who you are? And you know your purpose. And you know why you're here. What do you need to defend your I am for? You don't. But you're doing that in your own head. You're doing that. You don't feel whole because there is a hole. Yes, George. Or you think there's a hole. You think there's a hole. But really the hole, I always say this is the law of zero, which means everything comes back to you. So therefore you can never be incomplete. You can never be incomplete because everything works on the law of zero, which means everything always comes back to you. That's the beautiful thing about being God. Ain't nobody else to blame. Okay? So there's a defendant and there's a plaintiff. And the defendant is saying that the plaintiff is saying that the defendant owes them something, which means that they feel like they're not whole. And I'm not going to be a whole, and I'm not going to get peace until you do X, Y, and Z. You know what power the plaintiff actually have? To forgive. The plaintiff has the power to forgive. The plaintiff has the power to let go, and therefore they've made their own peace. Now you're not relying on somebody else to give you peace. You're relying on your own I am to give you peace. You're relying on yourself to give you peace. You're relying on the God within to give you peace. You're understanding that you can never not be whole because everything always comes back to you. Okay? So when you're in court and you're asking for a defendant to, come on, you got to pay up. That means you want revenge. You need to pay for what you did. You're seeking revenge. But the Lord says, vengeance is mine, thus saith the Lord. You're supposed to let that shit go. This goes back into when Torah did her Bible study and she talked about what turning the other cheek really means. That you're supposed to allow the universe to take care of that shit. Because when you do it back or when you're seeking vengeance, now you're going to keep it coming back to you. You have to remember that you're the original creator of all energy that comes back to you. You're the original. You're always the original. I'm sorry if you don't want to hear that. I'm sorry if you don't believe that. It's zero. Okay. So I got it here now. While the plaintiff is complaining, that means that they're not in their I am. If you're complaining that anything is missing, that you're not whole, you're not complete, and the only way this is going to get fixed is if you fix it, if you fix me, then that means that you're not standing firm in your I am. All right, I don't want to keep repeating myself. So, let me see. You owe yourself something. Yes, Sherry. You owe yourself the power to let go. That's what you owe yourself. But instead, we seek revenge and we seek vengeance instead of letting vengeance come whatever the way the universe saw them. They got it. They dealing with. They got a universe inside them just like you do. So the universe saw what they did. This is why we have debate class in school. You really don't know a topic until you argue it. Very interesting. Arguing your point makes you stronger in what you know. Okay. The word dispute also means to ask questions. So one of the things I learned about when I'm studying contract law is that creditors don't argue. Creditors don't argue. What creditors, and another word for creditor is a creator, because a creditor or a creator knows that they've created their whole scenario. So what am I going to argue about? What creditors do is they ask questions, which that also means that also means dispute. A dispute in the Bible is interchangeable with the term to ask a question. So instead of you arguing with somebody and trying to get somebody to agree with you, because that's what you're doing when you're trying to get somebody to agree with you, that means you're seeking their validation and you're seeking their approval. No, creditors don't do that. Because creditors know, a creditor knows that I am everything and I have everything that I need and I approve of myself. I don't need validation or approval from anybody else. So what a creditor will do instead of arguing, and this is contract law stuff. So this also ties into literally when you go into a courtroom, when you go into a literal courtroom, you're not supposed to answer no question that a judge asks you, because as soon as you answer them, you've lost jurisdiction right there. You've lost, how can I say that? Okay. When you're the one asking the questions, you're the king. You're as king. You're in the position of the king, because the king is the one that asks the questions. So when you go into a literal, this goes into being a creditor. When you go into a courtroom, as soon as you answer a question from a judge, you lost your sovereignty right there, because you showed the judge that I'm not in charge here. You are. You the one asking the questions. That makes you the king. So all that to say that creditors, they don't argue. They ask questions. Okay. Just ask questions, then you know if they agree with you before you get the written contract. Yeah, you become a minor. Exactly. When you're, I don't want to get off track. But yeah, basically you become like a child. When they're the one asking you the questions, you become like a child to them. So so the next thing I was going to talk about is what happens, the role that the judge is playing in the courtroom. You're the judge. You're the judge. Okay? And the judge is going to ask you, guilty or not guilty? The judge is going to ask the defendant, guilty or not guilty? You're going to raise your hand and you're going to say, I'm guilty or I'm not guilty. So guess what? You're the one that's saying that you're guilty. See, guilt has a lot to do with another reason why we get into these arguments. Because you're feeling guilt or shame about something within your I am. And that is why your adversary or your advisor showed up to show you what you're arguing about in your own head. So I just wanted to bring up that the judge is asking you, are you guilty or not guilty? Now, guilty comes from the word gild, which means to pay. So again, what they're really asking you, and remember this, if you ever go into a literal courtroom, when they ask you, are you guilty or you're not guilty, they really asking you, are you going to pay or are you not going to pay? Because the courtroom is all about money. Okay? Everything is all about money, because money is time, attention, and energy. So what they're asking you is, and what you're asking yourself when you're having these arguments with people is, am I guilty? Because a lot of people try to project their guilt and their shame and their insecurity onto you. But when you're not firm and established in your I am, yes, you get sucked into that shit. And now you're arguing because you feel guilty. You feel guilty about something that they said you should feel guilty about, right? Guilt means to owe money or to be in debt. To be in debt is to be in sin. When you're dealing with guilt and shame, you're in sin. Because really, you're not supposed to be ashamed about anything. You're not supposed to be ashamed about anything. That's another thing about being a creditor. You're supposed to be transparent and not ashamed about anything. All right. So, what I'm saying, the point of me saying all that is that you put guilt on yourself when you have arguments within your head, and you put guilt on yourself. A lot of times you put guilt on yourself because you did something out of guilt that you didn't really want to do, or you don't really want to do, and now you're doing it, and now you're having this argument with somebody because you're doing something that you didn't really want to do from the first fucking place, and you feeling guilty about it. You feeling guilty because you're doing something that you didn't really want to do any damn way. Okay. That's why you have to always do exactly what you want to do. And there will be no guilt. There will be no shame. There will be no resentment. There will be no regret when you always do exactly what you want to do. All right. Guilty in Hebrew is the word Ashem. A-S-H-E-M. The word guilty in Hebrew is A-S-H-E-M, which is Ashem. Now, if you say that backwards, it's Misha. My name, Kamisha. But it's Misha, M-E-S-H-A. And that word means freedom. That's also how I know that I'm supposed to be free in this life. I'm supposed to be doing what I'm supposed to be living in my I am. But anyway, Misha means freedom. Okay, so what I'm saying is that you saying that you're guilty or you dealing with guilt and shame has a lot to do with freedom, because they're the same word. That's what I'm getting at. It has to do with you arguing about something that you feel guilty about in your own head. Okay. So what happens is, when you get called into court, when your plaintiff comes, your accuser comes and say, hey, you did something to me. And you feel like you can't pay the debt, or you won't pay the debt, or you ain't paying the debt. You ain't apologizing. You feel like you ain't did nothing wrong. This is where the whole agree with your adversary quickly comes into. You have to decide, are you going to agree with yourself? Because if not, you're going to get thrown into prison. Mental bondage, I'm talking about, within your own mind. If you do not agree with yourself, I'm going to give you an example, okay? I was in a relationship, and I realized that I kept getting into arguments. We kept getting into arguments about the same thing over and over again. And it looked like it was different arguments, but it really wasn't. It was about the same damn thing. And I realized, after finally evaluating myself on why the fuck do I keep getting into these arguments with him, it was because I didn't agree with myself. It was because I wasn't firm in my decision on even being in a relationship with him to begin with. I wasn't 100% firm about that. And so it would manifest into our arguments. And I'm sure that he had some insecurities and stuff, and some doubts and fears, and we were still mirroring each other in our arguments. So that's what I mean by, when you don't agree with yourself, you manifest that shit. So here's the last thing I'm going to say. How long have I been on here? 45 minutes. Perfect. All right. The last thing I want to say is that in order for us to achieve a state of peace, you have to not look to other people to make you whole. Not look to other people to validate you. Not look to other people to agree with you. Not look to other people to say, yes, you're right. Last thing is, I wrote down, what is a debate? Debate means to quarrel, to dispute, and to beat down. Debater A debater is a debtor. Somebody that debates is a debtor. It means they're dead. They're a debtor. A debtor versus a creditor. Okay? A debtor, meaning that a debtor doesn't realize that they are everything. They don't realize the power of their I am. That's what a debtor, to me, that's how I define a debtor. Somebody that doesn't understand the power of their I am. They don't understand the power of the God within themselves. They don't understand that they're creating all of this shit, and that's why they get into debates and arguments with people. Only dead people argue because they are looking for someone to make them whole. Only debtors argue because they are looking for someone to make them whole. Take that into consideration, what I said about when you go into court. The plaintiff would be, I don't know, who would be who? Would the plaintiff be the debtor? Who would be the creditor in that instance? I don't think nobody would be. Who would be the creditor in there? I don't know. But anyway, so the only way to stop the arguing in your head is with praise, using I ams, which is praise. I am this, I am that. And with forgiveness of debt. Forgive yourself first and foremost, and forgive others. You know, I see a lot of people will be like, you know, what I got to forgive them for, what I got. See, they're thinking that forgiveness got to do with somebody else, and it don't. It don't have nothing to do with nobody else. It has everything to do with you. You not wanting to forgive somebody is you just holding yourself hostage. You just holding yourself hostage. So that was me opening wine, y'all. If y'all wonder what that noise was. Praise yourself. I want you to praise yourself. Y'all doing your affirmations? I know it seems corny. I am this, I am. See, I be having my music on and I be dancing and clapping and all that other shit when I'm doing mine. So, but yes, praising yourself and forgiving people is how you stop the arguing in your own head before the shit even manifests. In your own head. Okay. Let me see what y'all saying. Bait can't win. Bait gets eaten and drawn in. Yeah, you know what I had when I was doing my notes? I looked at the word debate. And of course I saw the word bait on there. And, you know, I thought about how we use bait to draw people in. I mean, or draw the fish in. And that made me start thinking about how debates definitely attract people. People like to watch people argue. I'm telling you, everywhere I look, when I study about the power of I am, that's the key. I am is a non-negotiable instrument. But the key is to stand on it and not be swayed back and forth. And when you are arguing with somebody, that means that you are not firm in your I am. Because why put so much energy into trying to make somebody else agree with you? That means that you're seeking validation from them. All right, I don't want to keep repeating myself. Bait has a negative connotation, but can be positive. Yeah, I could see that because that's what the law of attraction is. It's bait. It's bait. Yes, speaking affirmations repro on your subconscious mind. Yes, because you have to replace those negative thoughts with by restating, no, I don't care what you said. I am X, Y, and Z. I am blah, 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 blah. So you're fighting those cells within yourself that's still trying to hold on to the old you. The old shit that you used to say to yourself. You're fighting with that. All right, y'all. So we almost at 9 o'clock. I've been on here for an hour. There's a song I want to end with. If this is your first time on here, I always start with praise and worship, and I end with praise and worship. By praise and worship, I am talking about praising and worship the God within. I'm not talking about nothing spooky. I ain't talking about no God up in no sky nowhere. I'm talking about the God within your own mind. So the song that I'm going to play is giving you advice on what to do when you're having these arguments, whether it's within the argument or after the argument, or the argument that you have in your head, okay? Because they all happening. And it's Marvin Sapp, and it's called Praise Him. And in the song, the mantra in that song is he says, praise will confuse the enemy. So meaning that when you have an adversary in front of you, which is your advisor, which is showing you the shit that you have doubt about yourself, Marvin Sapp is saying, start praising yourself. Start praising the God within. Because that is what's going to help get rid of those arguments. Okay. Thank you all for coming. And have a good night. Drink my wine.